I hope y'all don't mind me smoking for this interview because, Lord, I've had a night in the ER. Well, I'm trying to think of where I want to go back to Roxanne. Now, if I remember correctly, it was a Tuesday, and it had to have been a full moon that night because, oh my Jesus word, child, when that girl came in there, I swear, I had to go run and put myself in isolation. But SARS had been a big concern, and she came in there and she was into PNP. I call that a problem picker. You know, I think she had been hitting on that stuff, and her face, oh my Jesus word, it looked like she had got, oh my Jesus word, I remember the first night that Roxanne had came into the ER. I had never met her before. You know, that god-awful smell. I said, oh Lord, we got one of these PNP girls. I call that a problem picker because it had looked like that child had gotten a butter knife to her face. Oh, my Jesus word, it was awful. I don't think that most of the staff in the ER that night was quite equipped to deal with what we had went through that night. I mean, I was ready because I had the Lord by my side. I was not only head of ER that night, but I was the exorcist on call for the hospital. So when she came in, I was like, demon, I rebuke you, honey. I tried not to touch her. I didn't want her contaminating me. We needed her out. I mean, it had to have been a full moon that week. We had Miss Watson had came in the hospital acting all crazy. The Devereaux girl had been in there the week before, and then Roxanne. I swear the only thing that we were missing was the werewolf attack. Lord, I better cross my P's and Q's, child. I swear. I'm not gonna lie, it was probably one of those more unprofessional moments in my career movement. Because, I mean, I've dedicated my life to helping, you know, all these girls that come in late night on the graveyard and the ER. You know, I've treated them all. Herpes, and syphilis, the clap traps, you name it. I mean, most of them are easy treatment. I give them some penicillin, I send them home, but oh my Jesus word, when Roxanne came in, I didn't know what to do. Thank God that night I was the exorcist on call at the hospital. So when she walked in, I said, oh Lord, give me strength. Demon, I rebuke you, not having it. So, first, I think the devil had just tried to get up in me because I was mortified and this fear and fright had coming over me. So I ran and I locked myself up in the isolation chamber. Did me a few tanks of oxygen and then about 6 annex, and you know, when I finally collected myself, I said, well, demon, I'm ready. So I went out there and there was this woman. She definitely wasn't a lady, but she was a grown woman, but she seemed like a frightened little girl inside. I'd seen that look before. I mean, the graveyard, they call it sketchy, but I call it stage fright for some of the girls because, you know, I like to boost their esteem, make them feel like they're stars in somebody's eyes. But yeah, she looked like she was just consumed by stage fright, like she'd been locked up or something in her house for days. It was quite obvious that she hadn't slept in, oh, I'd say at least a week or two, and oh, my Jesus word, nourishment, it was definitely out of the question. I mean, maybe she'd had like a can of raviolis or something a few days before because her breath had that spaghetti-o smell. You know what I'm talking about. I was just, I hate to sound unprofessional, but it was rank. But after I had collected myself and I came out, you know, and found out who this Roxanne character was. We didn't have any record on her because, of course, she didn't have an ID. She was trying to tell me she was 16. She could have been, I don't know, but she looked like an 80-year-old woman, like one of them gender-confused women. She kind of reminded me of a victim that we had in the ER the week before, except she was probably about 400 pounds smaller than this woman. The Devereaux girl, she had gotten shot in the face, but I was like, what is up with all of these transgenders this week? So, you know, I checked her blood pressure, and Jesus Christ, it was out of the roof. Her heart, oh my God, her pulse, you know, normal pulse is 90 to 110 a minute. Her pulse was racing at 180 beats a minute. I said, girl, I know you've been hitting that stuff. So, I mean, I had treated the other girls, you know, like I said, for syphilis and gonorrhea and DVDs, you know. But Roxanne I was quite scared of her because, you know, this was during that time that SARS was out, and it had looked like she had that rotten flesh disease. I mean, oh, her skin was god awful. Looked like she'd gotten a butter knife to it. So, I gave her a shot of morphine, put some Neosporin on her face, and gave her some sanitation tips on how to put on some cover stick without getting bacteria up into her look like war wounds. And I called her a cab. It was quite obvious that she was a little too active to be being in there anyway. She was all peeking out of the blinds of the emergency room and just not acting proper. And I was in one of them moods. I think I was about to get my cycle, so I was just irritated easily that night, so I had to send her off. I'm sure she went right back to the clubs. That girl didn't have no shame. Probably went right up into that one of them clubs on Bourbon Street. Big old gauze or something on her face. So I'm sure she drew a little Snoopy or a smiley face on it or something. Trying to make it look fashionable because she thought she was something. Lord. But you know, I don't know what happened to her after that. She probably got a bacteria infection or something and died. I mean, you know, we're living in one of them ages where you just don't know what you could catch. I mean, that Devereaux woman, she had tested positive for mad cow disease. Lord, but that's a whole nother story. But Roxanne, I mean, it looked like she had the rotten flesh disease. I didn't want her back in there. I mean, we didn't need that spreading. I mean, that was quite a concern back then. See, this was in the time before we had the bird pandemic. You know, that bird flu that everybody's all worried about now. Lord, the good old days. I remember back the good old days when you could have a headache and just eat an apple and take an aspirin and call the doctor once a day, and you was fine.